Calaroga Shark Media.
Hey there, I'm Johnny Mac and Mike Chisholm, host of the Letterman Podcast, and we are friendly, and sometimes we do crossover episodes. Mike and I recently did a session where we talked about things for like 2.5 hours, and I chopped it up into pizzas, and here, Mike and I were discussing the state of comedy as 2025 came to an end.
It's been an interesting year in all sorts of areas, but in comedy, I don't know, man, I just feel like the genre and the industry that is stand-up has never had a bigger, more successful year. But in that, it's also never felt as divided as it's felt. But you're the guru when it comes to this stuff. What do you think about that assertion?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just saw a piece on Vulture suggesting that comedians need to get more angsty and fight more. And believe me, as a podcast host, I love when the comedians are battling. You and I should start a war just for the clicks.
Yes, but let's do it.
On the other hand, if you look at it, what's really working is the Nate Bargatze's of the world doing the clean comedy family stuff, Sebastian Maniscalco, that style of comedy. But then at the other end, you've got the canceled of Ricky Gervais and Shane Gillis and Dave Chappelle. They're all canceled and they're never going to be able to speak again. They're selling out arenas.
Yeah.
You've got that other wing of Austin-ish and the Kreischers and the Rogans and the Seguras. You've got all that going on.
Yep.
So it's sort of fractured. It's tremendously successful. I'm all over the place. When they did the top comedians of the century, Dane Cook wasn't mentioned. Has everyone forgotten what a huge comic Dane was? And Dane selling out the Garden was a statement with 3 exclamation points. But now, I love him, but Weird Al sells out the Garden. Everybody sells out the Garden. So, something has changed there. The business is bigger than ever. A lot of that is Netflix driven for sure. But yeah, it's just a weird time, but there's comedy for everybody, right?
Oh, definitely. But thank you for mentioning Dane, because I remember back in the day, it's interesting that you talk about all the different facets of comedy. And I remember how big of a deal it was when Dice Clay sold out Madison Square Garden. Like, that was a huge when Dice Clay was, oh my God, Andrew Dice Clay is doing an arena, and then, you'd hear about it every once in a while, but then you got Dane who comes in the early part, and I'll admit, okay, fine. The Billboard list was of the 21st century, the top 25 comics of the 21st century. Well, I'm sorry, but if there was a guy that brought in comedy and elevated it at the beginning part of the century in the early 2000s, it was Dane. It was a big deal, the tour that he went on, that run he went on. And I mean, it's different than Kinison, but it's similar to Kinison in the sense that there's this huge thing that happens and it inspires all of these people. And then a couple years later, the star fades and it goes across, and now we're here in 2025 and we're debating whether he should even be on the list. Well, to me, of course, he should be on the list, but some people have short memories when it comes to this stuff, I suppose.
I have a strong opinion on my theory is that the stylized comedians, and Dane Cook did have a style to him, the physicality and the way he spoke, maybe not full on character like a Dice, but it's the brick wall comedians that tend to last. The Bill Burrs, the Dave Chappelle is just a guy talking in front of a brick wall. We could put in an arena, we could do a theater in the round, sure. But it's the traditional George Carlin-esque stand-up of, I'm going to stand here and just tell you what's on my mind, where some of that stylized stuff we've seen shooting stars over the years, and they come and go, and they're white hot, and they have that 3-4 years, and then they kind of go away. I'm not sure Dane is full-on stylized comedian, to use the term, but he was just a monster, a quote-unquote rock star there for a while. Good-looking guy, really lighting up crowds, people quoting his material, and you go about 20 years later, and it's like he's forgotten somehow. It's weird.
Yeah, it's crazy that he wasn't on that list. Like, as far as I'm concerned, he ushered comedy into the 21st century by making it more, talking about the MySpace stuff and the way that he would use the internet, not just in his act. I mean, of course, his act was very, very, it talked a lot about the internet and things like that. But the way that he built his community was a blueprint for what I imagine if podcasting existed back does now. I mean, he would have been one of the first people with a podcast. He really, really saw where the puck was going, and led an entire genre in that direction. I just so yeah. But that being said, the Billboard list was interesting. I recommend everybody to go back and listen to the Daily Comedy News podcast episodes where Johnny goes through the top 20, the Billboard top 25 comedians of the century. It's very, very good. You split up into 2 episodes. Again, bite-sized, really, really simple. Not like this behemoth of a show where it's long form. I really, really like the bite-size aspect of what it is that you're doing. And boy, you've got lots of stuff to talk about. And we could do separate shows, and we are going to do separate shows when it comes to this because there is so much to talk about. But the guy who brought me into this podcasting game, David Letterman, has put out in the last month a whole bunch of new content. In fact, more content in the last month than I think if you add up all the rest of the months, I think you might be pretty close. Have you watched any of the new My Next Guests yet?
I started to watch the Sandler episode.
Okay.
And I really struggle. So I'm stealing from Jimmy Buffett fans here. There was a group of Jimmy Buffett fans who created Church of Buffett Orthodox.
Yes.
And what their premise was that at one point Jimmy Buffett was about, hey, let's hang out at the beach and have a good time. And over the years, it became about product and knockoff Corona beer and restaurants. And I kind of want to form Church of Letterman Orthodox, who believe in I'm going to get myself in trouble here, the Testament of the 1230. We might read the 1130. And then the later works of David Letterman just aren't our thing. And boy, just where my mind is. I was on YouTube the other night, and I almost sent this to you, but then the clip went sideways. But the first few minutes of the clip were guys throwing stuff off a bridge onto a frozen lake. And I was like, yeah, that. I want more of that. Why isn't anyone doing that? Dave, can you throw something off a bridge onto a frozen lake? I want to watch that. And this elder statesman Letterman, I don't take away anyone's enjoyment of it. I don't take away your enjoyment of it. I'm glad Dave somehow has gone from a guy in a bad mood that doesn't interview people to the great interviewer. That's an interesting transformation. But those of us in the Church of Letterman Orthodox, I just want to throw stuff off a 5-story tower and have Chris Elliott do something weird and make fun of the whole thing not being that funny, making it funny. And as I've called it over the years, establishment Letterman just isn't my thing. I feel bad saying this out loud, especially on this show.
No.
That's, maybe some of your fans will be like, yes, Church of Letterman Orthodox. I want to sign up.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. And I mean, there are, I like the fact that our show is the size that it is because I can kind of look into the people who support the show and you can see the different, I can still see everything. It's like when a musician is still playing in a venue that's like maybe under 700 people, they can still see everybody that's in the audience as they're playing on it. And it kind of feels that way. Certainly there is a huge contingent of people who tolerate this show because every once in a while they get a beautiful itch scratched talking about the late night show that they enjoyed so much. The Church of Letterman, or the Orthodox Letterman Church there certainly would be a lot of members. But that being said, he did transform, and I would submit that the long form, skills that Dave is now showing us. Really, at the end of the day, I think it took a career to build the skills that he has done has gotten when it comes to this stuff. I see him interviewing Sandler, and it's an interesting thing. We'll do an entire episode. I want to wait till you watch the entire episode if you can stomach it, because one of the things that you talk about is the idea about how strong a dramatic actor Adam Sandler actually is, as opposed to being a comedian or being a funny man. And I love the reoccurring bit that appears, whether it's a bit or not, I guess remains to be seen on your show where you talk about that. They certainly talk about it in Dave's long form interview with them, but more so, I think back to the days you were talking about, and I can remember Adam Sandler's first few times on late night. And it's really cool to watch Dave go back and talk to some of these people that he has had a TV or a showbiz relationship with for so long, and they can talk about some of those early days and things like that and add that as an element to the conversation. So you and I can go really deep on the Adam Sandler one, and that'll be a lot of fun, but they're all good. The Mr. Beast episode is good. Really good, in fact, especially for people who don't know who Mr. Beast is. Biggest broadcaster on the planet. A lot of people still don't know who he is. I didn't know who Mr. Beast was, other than his name. So it's interesting to hear Dave kind of come from the curiosity standpoint with him. The Michael B. Jordan episode, very, very good as well. Very strong. I put that up there with some of the other episodes of people who I didn't know who they were very, 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 very well. Like, they weren't super familiar with me. And then you get a whole bunch of insights, and now you look at the body of work and some of the things that this person has done, and it adds dimensions to it. And Michael's did that with me. But for me, the highlight of all of them was the Jason Bateman episode. I mean, that episode to me was absolutely perfect. By the way, it's not throwing stuff off towers, but Dave is doing silly things a little bit in some of these episodes. He goes to a hat shop in London. He smokes a cigar for the first time ever. I smoke cigars because of David Letterman. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And then, of course, at the end of the Bateman episode, there's an Arrested Development thing with Ron Howard and the whole 9 yards. And it seems fun big time is what it felt like to me. So anyway, there's a sum up of how I feel about that. We're going to do postmortems. Johnny and I will do a postmortem on Adam Sandler. We're going to do postmortems on the other 3 episodes with the appropriate guest as well. Thank you for letting me monologue there for a second, my friend. I appreciate it. It's been a while since I've done one of these, so I needed to get that out. Thank you.
Oh no, I feel bad. So I started to watch the Sandler one, and it's fine. It's just, this is all about me and my sensibility. I was recently thinking about, so I'm going to drop a name that, unless you lived on the East Coast at some point that I'm not aware of, you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about. But a section of your viewership is going to know the name Uncle Floyd. So Uncle Floyd had a UHF show in the 80s when, we didn't have cable in Queens. So you played with the other knob, and you one night you come across this Uncle Floyd show. It aired at 6:00. And it's this dude from New Jersey with a puppet with a lower budget than we're using right now. Like, at least you have a backdrop, right? Maybe my setup with the stick-on window, maybe that was the budget of the Uncle Floyd show. And he had a puppet and a couple other guys from Jersey, and they did, pardon my French, half-ass sketches and a viewer mail type thing. And it was hilarious because it was just so anti, and that's what appeals to me. And if I go back to 12:30, especially once, God bless, my godmother gave me, maybe for my 15th or 16th birthday, a VCR, so I didn't have to stay up till 1:00 every night. Mm-hmm. But, you hand me an episode of Late Night with David Letterman, and, from New York, insert joke here, it's Late Night with David Letterman. Tonight's guests, Jason Bateman, and, quirky guest on the back half. I probably would have watched the opening, the Paul segment, the desk piece, fast forwarded through the guest, and then caught the middle weirdness when Chris Elliott came out and did something, and then bailed on the episode. That was how I consumed the show. But that's not a dig at Dave. That's just that's where my head is at. And that's one of the major influences on how I approach everything creatively. Like, that was formative in my brain, that things like Floyd, on how you do all this. Like, don't try and do Johnny's Tonight Show. Johnny did that already. All right, let's deconstruct this whole thing and do something crazy.
Yep. Yeah. And they not only, again, we talked about Dane at the beginning of this, how he kind of created a blueprint. Well, that's what Dave did. Dave and company, they created a blueprint for, that would influence all of entertainment and comedy and how we view it and how we look at it. They added that element of cynicism, which I just absolutely love. I'm an optimist. I'm a natural optimist. I'm a positive guy. But I do have this cynicism streak in me, and it was given to me by David Letterman, by pro wrestling as well. But both of those things, I thought that was a neat addition to. That was something that they brought to the table. The idea of kind of not trusting leadership a little bit in a different way. Now, of course, it has ballooned into, I think most people are mostly cynical now, or a lot of people are mostly cynical now. But adding a little cynicism to the comedy, I think, was a phenomenal thing to do. And then again, the celebration of failure. You talk about Floyd. And what he did, well, really, at the end of the day, the idea of let's give a bunch of hooligans a television studio and see what happens, that's a fun premise right there. Who knew that the guy who did it would turn into who is probably known as the greatest broadcaster that we've ever seen. That's how I see him anyway. I don't think anybody could have predicted that, but yeah, it changed a culture. It really did. The kids in college watching, this show, Don Giller told me a story, and then a few of the writers, confirmed it. The first time the show went out to California, when they took it, they were just kind of doing the show. They had their heads down, and everybody was just trying to stay on the air, make the best show that they could make. And then at some point they said, okay, let's take the show to California. And when they took the show to California, and the crazed lineups for tickets for people to get in, the insanity of what was going on, lineups around the block and things like that, and the staffers were just baffled by it. They had no idea that they were taking an entire generation of late baby boomers, early Gen Xers, and kind of steering what their comedic sensibility would be, for the next quarter century. It's remarkable what they did. And anyway, I'm just preaching to the choir when it comes to that.
Well, also, right? The box that late night was put in, the things you can't do because Johnny does those, so you can't do those.
Yes.
Forced some creativity there. You can't do a 10-minute monologue. All right. Well, we got to fill an hour. We got to come up with something. Yep. And, all those little things just added up to magic. Then when you get to 11:30 and the box isn't there anymore, right? You can wear an Armani suit and wear shoes and look like a grown up, and we all age. I guess. No, I mean, I'm wearing a hoodie, but you start to take that step towards establishment Letterman, as I call it.
Yeah.
And now the Netflix show is Elder Statesman, Dave.
Yes.
And again, I just want to throw a watermelon off a tower.
More with Mike Chisholm in a second. He hosts the Letterman Podcast, which you should check out. Be right back. Continuing my conversation with Mike Chisholm from the Letterman Podcast. In this segment, we discussed some of the factual inaccuracies in Dave Chappelle's recent special.
That's interesting how the people are calling him out for some of the factual inaccuracies now. You don't hear that happening to stand-ups very often.
No, I guess the notable one was Hassan Minhaj, and that's a weird one. Here's a guy that just seemed like the next Daily Show host, right? It was just perfectly cast and probably would have done a good job. And for some reason, people took his stand-up special seriously, and it went sideways. So that whole thing was weird. Nitpicking Chappelle about Representative McCain versus Senator McCain, I don't think is a big deal. I do think Trump being the one to pardon Jack Johnson is interesting and interesting left out of the story.
Yeah.
But these are all just, choices we make. We edit on the fly, doing the podcast every day. I edit on the fly and just, I don't talk about things that just don't interest me or I don't want to go there. Just top of mind as we're recording this. There's a Russell Brand story in the news, and I just don't want to go there. I try and stylize my show as something fun to listen to, especially in the morning. And some of the Russell Brand stuff, I just don't want to go there. It's not censorship; it's just choosing differently.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Which is, by the way, what freedom of speech is all about. It's being able to just make a choice and say, no, I'm going to leave that, and everything's going to be fine. They can have that. I can have this, right? And that's
even
that's what
like
it's supposed to be
the name of my show, Daily Comedy News.
Yes.
It's not the New York Times. Jason Zinnemann has accused me of being a journalist, which I reject. Jason Zinnemann in New York Times. I am not a journalist. I'm a dude in a podcast just talking to a microphone, and he goes, "No, I'm a journalist." And I'm like, And am I talking about things in the news? Yes, but I don't consider myself any sort of, I'm not the Dan Rather of comedy. It's just, I don't know, here's some stuff I Googled and I'm going to riff about it and kill 12 to 20 minutes and go home and hope you had a good time. And, some of it is said lighthearted and, like we've talked about it. It's all real. I don't I don't enjoy Adam Sandler comedies, as I've explained to my audience repeatedly. I don't walk around all day going, I can't believe he made Happy Gilmore 2. I'm so mad. I just don't care. I'm not going to watch it. The story where I forbade my children from renting Jack and Jill and said that I would rather light the $5 on fire is a true story. That's not even happened for effect. I could, none of my kids are home right now. I could bring them in here and they'll tell you that's a thing that happened. So that is how I feel about Sandler comedies. But do I play it up? Of course I play it up. Just like the Joe Coy bit or the Jay Leno bit or anything else. These are just recurring touchstones back to that Letterman-esque sense of humor of we're all in this together. And if I'm doing the show right and I'm building a community, you know where I'm going to go before I go there, and that's part of the fun.
Yep. Where did Chappelle end up on your list for the year?
I have it maybe 5. So my takeaway on the Chappelle special was I compared it to when you sit down and watch a baseball game and your starting pitcher just got it today, and you're like, oh my goodness, he's just untouchable today, and we're 4 innings in, and it's a no-hitter, and he struck out 9 guys in the first 4 innings, and wow, this is just going to be unstoppable. And then, a hit happens, and then the starting pitcher leaves and gives up 2 runs in 7 innings with 12 strikeouts, which is a great performance, but not the one you had in your head an hour ago. And that's how I felt about Chappelle. Like, all right, I hit play. It looks great. It looks like a major special. And Dave comes out and he commands the stage, and he's got something to say, which is very important to me as a comedy snob. I want you to have something to say, and he's got something to say, and he's saying it. He's presenting it at least as very thoughtful, and I'm hanging on every word. And for the first 4 innings, holy cow, this is the special.
It's a no-hitter.
And by the time I got to the end of it, it was really good, but just didn't sustain the same way. So I still have Mark Maron as the top special of the year. Yeah, I think that's peak Maron, and Maron had something to say and said it very well. I have Kevin Hart at number 2, which is just silly fun. Just jokes. Robbie Hoffman's special is very good.
It's very good. I watched it. I watched it as it hadn't hit my radar at all. And listening to you talk about it, I watched it and I was like, oh my God, yeah, it was very, very good.
So there's plenty of fine specials. And again, I am a comedy snob because of what I did for 10 years, just listening to everybody's material, the versions that they chose to release, listening to that all day, every day. I can see the Matrix. I can see what you're doing. I understand what you're doing. I get why people think it's funny, but like if you make me watch Sebastian Maniscalco's new special, I totally understand why a random couple from suburban Philadelphia is going out and having a good time at that show. I get it.
Sure.
But I'm watching it. I'm like, oh, stop. I mean, just can you not make the ridiculous faces? Can you tell a real story here somewhere?
Yes.
But, Chappelle, again, I'll keep saying the phrase, he's got something to say, and that's why he's at the top of the game.
Sebastian, to me, and I love him, but to me, you go back to whatever special it was, I want to say it's like 2015 maybe, is the one where he talked about the company bit. Do you remember that? To me, he looked at himself back then and decided to turn the volume up to 11 on the character of that since then. It was nice when he had like a little bit of the, that accent, that mob,
the affectation,
whatever you want to call it. The affectation. Thank you. That's perfect. Now it's just like he lives in it. It's lit up to 10. It should be back at 4. It should be a little more subdued. I think. I don't know. That's just my. It's just more the same, right?
And I don't know why I have a problem with Sebastian doing it, whereas my friend Larry the Cable Guy, Dan Whitney, here's a guy that if I called him right now, who'll do my podcast, do we hang out every day? No, but he's a friend. He's not somebody I know. He's a friend. And I've been backstage talking to Dan Whitney, and then he slips into the Larry character, who speaks a little differently and has a more of an accent. And I think we all understand the Larry the Cable Guy character. First of all, it's called Larry the Cable Guy. It's not, ladies and gentlemen, Dan Whitney going up and doing that material. It's something called Larry the Cable Guy that doesn't wear sleeves.
Right.
And I don't know if it's because Sebastian Maniscalco has evolved from being Sebastian Maniscalco, Italian-American comic, to Sebastian the Italian guy. Maybe it's that, right? Maybe it's that.
Mm-hmm. It's going to be interesting to see what Gervais's special does to the list.
Ricky knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to trigger people. He successfully triggers people. Then he doubles down that he triggered you, and it's your fault that you're triggered. He understands what he's doing, but he's really good at it. I mean, Chappelle's doing the same thing.
There he is.
And people just get really irate at Ricky Gervais specials, but they're pretty funny, and I can sit on the couch and understand what I'm watching, right?
Yes.
I get what he's doing there. He's going to make some points, and he's going to push some buttons along the way, and hopefully we have a laugh when we go home, and then he goes and donates $2 million to the animal charity. So, much like Jay Leno, I'm not sure Ricky Gervais is the worst person who ever lived.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And that's your daily comedy news for today. Again, check out the Letterman Podcast. Mike is the host, a really good guy. I always enjoy chatting with him, and I'll see you tomorrow.